Hello, humans, and welcome to the Cartridge and Disc Podcast. This is your Gen X Gamer here. I had to re-record this particular video because the algorithm didn't like my first version. Why? Because I use colloquial terms that us Hispanics love to use amongst each other. What am I talking about? First, let's put it into context. Okay, before you play any of these new games, these digital downloads, right? The electronic media. Right now we're walking away from physical media, right? And everything is digital. And when you're playing digital games, you're buying a license. In order to buy that license, you need to sign that contract. You need to sign those terms of service. And when it comes to playing that game, that terms of service is God. Let me tell you guys, when I was playing Streets of Rage, when I was playing Gradius, when I was playing all those classic games, when I was at the arcade, there was one thing for sure. You know, those companies didn't care what my religion was, what my views on the world was. They didn't care who I voted for. They didn't care what my political affiliations were for. They didn't care what my views on life in general were. They only wanted my money. And the only thing Sega and Nintendo were concerned about is that I didn't charge money for playing their games commercially, right? Via console. You know, Nintendo still enforces that in Japan. They'll close you down if you're using their consoles and charging people money at like a bar arcade or something like that. That's always been true, right? Of all games. For the most part, you're buying a license to play that game in that particular console. But it's a lot less restrictive than what it is today, right? When you're talking about digital media, now you're talking about a third party policing the speech between you and your friends. Not only your speech, but the communications between you and your friends. And the people policing it have no context. They have absolutely 100% say. And it's just ridiculous. Some of these companies will put on, for example, rappers that can rap about crime, that can rap about race, they can rap about, you know, gender, mistreatment of women, all kinds of things. Not a problem. Not a problem. They're making money, and they don't see it as right to censor them for whatever. Now, there's rappers of all genders and all ethnicities, so, you know, pick your rapper. There's a lot of Hispanic rappers, for example, that say some horrible stuff. But you'll see them on YouTube and other places, and they don't get censored, right? But if you, as an individual, have the wrong opinion about something, you're done. There's things you can't say, right? I don't think the algorithm liked my previous video because I used some colloquial terms that we use as Hispanics here in America. Look, I'm an American, but I'm of Hispanic descent. And I'm in a mixed marriage, and my kids are you know, half Salvadorian, half Mexican. But there's a commonality in those cultures where they use derogatory terms sometimes as terms of endearment, right? And those of you who are Hispanic will know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who aren't, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, especially if you're American. You're going to relate to this. Let's say you're at a restaurant and you're ordering, right? Well, most Americans, when they order at a Mexican restaurant, they'll say, I'll have some carne asada, please, right? But if you're Hispanic, you know that you pronounce it carne asada. And other Hispanics will not let you get away with using the American way of saying it. You can't say, can I have some carne asada, please? Right? As soon as you say that, these things will be brought up immediately. Number one, your legal status to be in this country. Your sexuality will be questioned right away. Right? And you'll make jokes about those things. And it's just something that we do, right? We do all the time. It's part of our culture. Latin America, Mexico, we all do this to one extent or another. We play rough in those ways. But we do it with people that we love. We do it with people we care about. If somebody else is listening to that conversation, they're not going to get it. They'll think that those people are being are harassing the other person. When we're playing online, right? Just like in the old COD days, you know, it was the Wild West back then, right? Now these servers are getting turned back on, and now Microsoft wants to use AI and other means to police the chats and have other people report, right? And you can violate terms of service by doing that, right? When you don't have the context, if you're not part of that group, if you're not of that ethnicity, you're not going to know that, right? You're not going to know that. And these people have the right to ban you. People that you don't know where they're from. They could be from another country. They could be from this country. Who the heck knows? But they have the power to silence you, right? Silence you in any way. And the problem is that changes from time to time. Look at what Twitter was censoring 5 years ago as opposed to what they're censoring now that Elon is there. Right? Those things can change. That's why I'm a big proponent of having a lot of these companies that deal with the public in general, where the public can speak, being treated as utilities, right? Because you can imagine, right? Because what's happening now, if you sign these terms of service, you're by default signing away a lot of your freedom of speech. And freedom of speech doesn't apply to everything. We love it here in America, but it doesn't apply to everything at all. You have to talk about freedom of speech in the concept of where you're free, but when you're entering into a private contract with a company and you're saying, look, I agree to your terms of service, and part of the terms of service says you're not going to say X, Y, and Z, then that's not freedom of speech anymore. You're entering into a legal contract with the company, and you have no choice if you want to play that video game. Absolutely zero choice, right? And that's where you run into problems. I didn't have to sign anything to play Streets of Rage. I don't think anybody wants to sign away the way they joke around with their friends in private, regardless of ethnicity, in order to play a first-person shooter, or to play a platformer, or to play anything by that matter. Right? Is that something we really want to do? What are you willing to sign in order to play a game? By default, I keep telling people this, by default, you have to censor yourself everywhere now, because you don't know if what you say gets taken out of context, and now you're violating terms of service because somebody sitting at a desk or an AI can decide all of a sudden that you meant this instead of that. That is a very, very slippery slope that nobody should get into. But that's coming with the event of AI, with these new terms of service, with people wanting to police chats and private conversations. That's what's going to happen. You don't have private conversations under the terms of service. I hope you know that. Everything belongs to them. So what are you willing to sign in order to play a game? That is the question. All right, guys, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. Hopefully they'll let this one up, and I will talk to you on the next one. Take care.